Hey everyone, welcome to the Rome Summit, session 4. Jason Griffin here, happy to have you with us. Joined as always by a great panel of members of the Rome community, and really looking forward to jumping into a great conversation today. So quick intros around the horn. Joined by Lukas, better known as CortexFutura. Lukas is a PhD candidate from Germany. He works at the intersection of political science and cybersecurity. His Rome usage is mainly around research and writing, as well as course creation. He's got a couple of well-known courses in the Rome community in Cite to Write and Galaxy Brain, and a new course that we're going to talk about here on today's call called Rome in Context. Lukas also does one-on-one Rome coaching. Lukas, welcome.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on. This is fantastic.
Yeah, excited to have you. Also joined by David Vargas. David is from Long Island, New York. He left his full-time software engineering job back in 2020 to focus on open source software development. He is the creator behind the very popular Roam.js, which I'm sure pretty much all of you are familiar with. He's using that really as a springboard to a career in open source software, and hoping to build a platform for others to get into that field as well. David, welcome to the session.
Hey everyone, thanks Jason. Really excited to be here.
All right. And last but not least, we've got Marc Koenig. Marc is from Madison, Wisconsin. He is a Roam user as far as task management, information capture, and processing. He's got a great YouTube channel that focuses a lot on Roam content, including a very popular 100 Roam tips video that if you haven't checked out, would definitely recommend that. He is also the creator of the new 30 Days of Roam course, which we are going to talk about on this session as well. Marc, welcome.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, excited to have you all here. So let's go ahead and jump straight in. And I wanted to actually start with you, Marc, and talk a little bit about the course that I mentioned a minute ago, the 30 Days of Roam course that I know is hot off the presses. So give us a quick overview on that. Give us kind of the elevator pitch. What is 30 Days of Roam all about?
Yeah, so thanks so much. 30 Days of Roam is basically a live cohort course, which is very easy to say, that combination of words. You can see it on the screen here. Thanks so much for emceeing, Jason. This is great. So basically the concept is that in 30 days, you will go from a total beginner, scrub in Roam research, and by the end, you will be fluent and have a daily habit. So this is for people who are starting from scratch or have done Roam for a while and just kind of want to get back to the roots and reboot their practice to try and really adapt it and make it part of their daily practice. So it's 30 days. We do 5 days of live streaming every morning to try and get you in the practice of just kind of incrementally adding one feature at a time, not getting overwhelmed, just focusing on the basics of Roam. And unfortunately, / good news, we sold out the cohort already. So we're going to have 50 people going through this kind of early access cohort, and I should learn a ton. We'll offer it again at some point, but yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
That's great. Well, congratulations on selling out. I know you sold that out very quickly, and that's really, we're excited for you. It sounds like a great course. Talk to me a little bit about the inspiration behind it. You know, the specific angle that you're coming at it from. What kind of inspired you to jump in and create your own course on Roam?
Yeah, a couple different things. So I did a Roam weekend course with Ali Abdal, the big YouTuber who is more well known for doing Notion, but is actually a big Roam fan behind the scenes. And that was a 2-day course, and we had 2 hours each day, and we kind of broke it up into like trying to teach people all of the basics on day 1, and then teach them application on day 2, which was incredibly ambitious in retrospect. So I think that it was really valuable for folks who already had an intermediate knowledge of Roam, but for the actual true beginners, I think it was a little bit tough to keep up. And it really taught me that if you need to teach someone Roam, they really have to be applying it as they go. And it's hard to do that in one session. So after talking with some buddies and kind of workshopping the idea, we remembered the 30 Days of Yoga with Adrian, the YouTube series, and how radically popular that is, and how that really eased a ton of people into yoga and into that kind of form of exercise online, and thought, hey, maybe this would be a good YouTube format. That said, I know that a lot of these courses are radically different in their expression in terms of for the learners themselves than what the course creator would think. So I decided that I would offer it first before turning it into a YouTube series or something more accessible as a live kind of one-on-one coaching, so that we can learn what the actual stumbling blocks are, so that the curriculum can be like kind of finessed into a place where it's ready to go for a broader audience. So that's really the inspiration.
That's great. One last question for you on that related to that topic is, you're going with this cohort-based approach, and you talked a little bit about your reasons for doing that from a content development perspective, but talk about your perspectives about the benefits of a cohort-based approach from the learner's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the biggest benefit is that you have peers. So you can talk to folks in a live way. You can do breakout sessions and talk to people who are at different stages of their journey. And that tends to both increase empathy for everybody across the board, but also really allow you to be encouraged by other people's perspective, kind of feel like you're doing something in community. So when you hit those snags and you hit those difficult points of learning, you have the ability to process that out loud with folks and break through those obstacles. And then also, as the learner in an early access course where you're working directly with the person who's developing it, you actually get to influence what the curriculum looks like. So based on what your interests are, the kind of goals that you want to get out of Roam or struggles that you're having, you can directly impact me and what I teach in a really kind of accessible way.
Right. Yeah. Great points. I think for many people, Roam can be kind of a daunting endeavor to get into. And I would have to imagine that being in that cohort-based environment would be really helpful, because I remember for months when I was learning Roam, I was like, am I the only person that's just really struggling to wrap my head around it? And it wasn't until I started getting more involved in the communities through Twitter and things of that nature that I realized, a lot of people struggle with that. And so I think that sense of community is really important. David, I'd love to get your perspectives here. Before we came on air tonight, we were talking a little bit about the importance of mastering the fundamentals. And you have Roam.js, and you're building sort of extensions to enhance the functionality, but share your perspectives on the importance of users kind of mastering those fundamentals before they really jump into the more advanced stuff.
Yeah, for sure. When I first started using Roam, I went like 6 to 7 months of just like sort of just using it as like another file system, and it didn't really click for me, and I didn't understand like what the big deal was. I was like, okay, sure. I'm like putting notes down in here in different pages. I had like a table of contents, and I felt very filey. And then I took Nat Liason's course, and it like completely like warped my mindset around it to make it more of like a networked tool, and like bounce off the daily notes page. And I was like, oh, now I get it. Like now I'm starting to understand like why this is so cool. And so because I personally had a very slow start to using the tool, it's like very important for me to express to others that like you have to really get comfortable with it and really get used to the blank canvas that you have before you dive into like any upgrades or any like enhancements or anything like that. Like notice, like build your own systems, build your own patterns, find the gaps, and then go off and try to gaps.
Yeah, I think that find the gaps part is critical, because especially in an environment like Roam, where there's a lot of excitement and a lot of new sort of, it's a novel, nascent software, and there's a lot of new development. It can be easy to get into tail chasing mode, where it's like, oh, this is possible and that's possible, and you spend a lot of time sort of playing around. And I think partially that's helpful when you're learning a new piece of software, but it also, there's a lot of merit, I think, to just focusing on the fundamentals and then letting sort of the blockers that you run into dictate where you go invest extra time in terms of figuring out what other tools are out there. So that's great
absolutely
stuff.
Yeah, I see so many people on Twitter like say things along the lines of like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, or like, oh, do I need to learn how to code, or like, oh, etc. So I was like, no, block out all that noise, just focus on your practice, your patterns, your writing, and then find the gaps from there.
Yeah, agreed. Lukas, I'd love to come to you as a fellow course creator. I share your perspectives on what Marc's doing here.
Yeah, totally. I think the fundamentals are, I think that's one of the fun things about Roam, right? Like how important the fundamentals are, and yet how diverse the application of the fundamentals can be, right? which is kind of the thing I want to cover with my course as well, right? Like we have, okay, what is a block? And there's a million things you can do to explain a block in context. And I think what Marc's doing with the cohort feeling of seeing other people work with this and kind of not having the feeling that you described, right? Of being, okay, like, am I the only one who finds this kind of freaky, what's going on here, right? I think getting these things, I don't want to say drilled in because that sounds so harsh and so like difficult, because it doesn't have to be and it isn't. But like getting that basic floor completed in, or the muscle memory of doing that over and over again, I think is super, super valuable. And I think there actually can't be enough courses that teach you these basic building blocks, because with every perspective that we have on that, we can like find the exact thing you want a particular person to experience to get it, because there's just so many ways to introduce people to this.
Right, right. Absolutely. Well, you know, I'm actually, I'd like to actually come to you next, Lukas, and talk a little bit about the course that you're doing, since we're on this topic. Again, let's start with just the elevator pitch. Give us the high level overview. What is the Roam in Context course all about?
Right. Yeah, thanks. So Roam in Context does try to give you entry points that are coming from your context, right? I'm trying to teach you the very basic features of Roam. What is a block? What is a block reference? How does linking work? What's a page? All these very basic things. I'm trying to teach these coming from a note-taking perspective, from a research perspective, from a task and project management perspective, from journaling, and all these kinds of perspectives, right? So in all the modules that you see here on the screen right now, the content, right? So the features that I cover are exactly the same, right? But the idea is to talk through these features and directly apply them in the perspective, right? Because in my experience, that really helps in getting the fundamentals in, right? Transfer learning is awesome, right? Learning one skill and applying it in another domain is fantastic. But if you want to learn the very basic features of a software, you don't want to burden like the learner's brain with too much transfer learning work, right? You want to show them exactly what they can do, how they can do it in the thing they want to accomplish, right? The job they want to get done. I want to use Roam for journaling, so show me everything in terms of journaling, right? That's the elevator pitch idea for Roam in Context.
Yeah, I love it. And so a couple of things. Number one, I noticed that the course is free. Talk a little bit about your decision to make it free for the community.
Absolutely, yes. So I've been very lucky in that it's April now, right? So for a bit over a year, I've been able to teach people in my other two courses, Cite and Galaxy Brain, how to use Roam. And those are, again, very specific niches, right? Cite is for researchers like myself. I'm a PhD student. I use Roam all day, every day for my research. And I think I can teach, and I have taught many people how to usefully employ it there. Galaxy Brain goes more towards like general thinking with Roam algorithms of thought, that kind of thing. And given that I have gotten so much from the community, just through interactions, but also like from the people who've taken my courses so far, I kind of wanted to just give back and say, hey, here's like what I can teach you, the very basics for free, have it, have fun, and that's it. And the other thing is that I really wanted to make something that I kind of wanted in the beginning, which is the Roam in context, right? The very basic features explained in a way that I can kind of choose my own adventure of, okay, I want to use this for journaling, so show it to me in terms of journaling. So that's kind of the two reasons why I wanted to do this.
Cool. Love it. David, I'd love to get your perspectives here. What was your learning style like in Roam, and what's your take on this sort of context-driven, use case-driven style of education for the software?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a useful approach to go, because you always want to know like why you want to use any given thing. I mostly use Roam in the context of like my day and task management. So that's like my primary use case. I do some writing in there as well, but it's mostly in a task management perspective. If I was to take one of Lukas's 7 perspectives, it's like most of that one. And so, just planning out my day and like setting to-dos for future days, and like, like every day I like log on, and Roam is like my permanent tab that's on my laptop, and just driving all like everything I'm doing from there. Yeah,
I think the use case driven approach is compelling to me for a similar reason. Actually, we were talking about the technology earlier and how you can kind of get pulled in so many different directions. And with Roam, tactically, when you're just in there writing, it can be the same thing. Like there's so many different things you can do with that blank page. And so I think, starting with those use cases of like, is it task management? Is it just free form journaling? Is it personal productivity? Is it creating blog posts? And really letting some of the constraints of that particular context sort of pull you along and focus your efforts, I think could be a really valuable way to learn. Marc, I'd love to hear, again, as sort of a fellow course creator, just share your perspectives on what Lukas is doing here.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And you had, so Cite to Write is the previous course you've put out, right? And it's more like an academic, academic bent. What have you learned from, is this a response to that at all? Or like, what are you taking from, because that's a very niche and also like pretty high price previous course that I bet provided a ton of specific value. Was this kind of like a desire to take the learnings there and make it more broadly applicable? I'm curious what that path has been like.
Yeah, sure. Certainly. I think like teaching, I don't know, it's like a couple of hundred people through Cite to Write and Galaxy Brain has definitely taught me a lot about like teaching in terms of video. But I think the biggest thing it has taught me is like where the kind of little tripwires are in getting started in Roam, right? Like teaching people the very basics is a feature of the Cite to Write course, and finding ways to broaden that base of what I've learned in teaching people the very basic features of a thing is, I think, one of the most fun challenges actually for me, right? I've personally, one of the works that has inspired me most was like 10 years ago, I learned programming through Zed Shaw's Learn Python the Hard Way. And what I really, really appreciated about that book was how step-by-step it was, and how unpretentious it was in a way in giving me just the thing I needed step by step. And I kind of wanted to do that for Roam. And that's certainly been informed by what I learned teaching Cite to Write. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Lukas. I'd love to shift gears now and come over to David to talk a little bit about some of the recent work that you're doing over there at Roam.js. Let's start with Serendipity. I think this is a really interesting extension that you've created. So give us the overview on that.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that's a lot of users love to play around with their Roam graph is this idea of randomness. And we take a bunch of notes on like all the content we consume and our daily interactions, and those notes are only useful if they are brought to us again and we get to reuse them. And so Serendipity is a way to take some subset of your graph that you mark with a few tags, and have that auto-populate into your daily notes page each day. And so, each day you log on, there'll be some number of block references populated into your daily note page. That number is configurable, which note, like the pool that it chooses from is configurable. And then it's just like a way to like spark creativity, spark curiosity, like teleport you into some previous past time when you wrote down those notes.
Yeah, I love the idea behind this. I did a Roam Summit session a few weeks ago on journaling, and all three of the panelists on that session talked about having random blocks pulled into their daily journals. And I had heard people talking about sort of the random element of Roam and promoting serendipity in their graphs, but to see it in that context was really compelling. And so I've played around with this extension, and I think it's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the use cases that you've seen out there, or would consider good sort of practical use cases for people to understand like how this might fit into their graph?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one is writing prompts. Right? Like if you're looking for creativity for your next blog post or what to write about next, and writer's block is like a big thing that a bunch of people run into. Being surfaced not just random notes, but like random group of notes, and then you can make almost like random connections between the random notes get surfaced to you. It could be like a launching pad for you to go into writing about whatever it is you want to write about next.
Right. Marc, I'd love to get your take on this. Do you do anything like this? I know you're primarily a sort of a task management user, but you do some work, as I understand it, with writing and sort of creativity. Do you see any uses for this in your own Roam usage?
Yeah, absolutely. I set up Roam 42 at one point, and the random block like resurfacer was super, super interesting to me. I couldn't figure out how to, I wasn't tech savvy enough, or maybe the functionality wasn't there, less likely the second. But I couldn't figure out how to get it to be like, just pull thoughts from this tag. Like I could figure out like just this page but anyway, it was even just kind of the limited functionality that I could figure out was really, really interesting to me for pulling random. Like I saw someone did it for like stoicism quotes, which is a fun idea. I'm thinking about it for the 30 Days of Roam course, having people's like stories or their experiences that they're going through at the different phases of their journey being randomly pulled into like the homepage experience on a daily basis, so people can see what other people are experiencing and have experienced maybe even in previous cohorts of the course. So I'd love to figure out how to set up some kind of serendipity that helps like students in a course and in a program get like access to old cohorts or other people's thoughts, because I think that that's another thing that, and certainly in a multiplayer Roam, that could be a huge benefit of randomly exposing you to other people's connections and things that you might not even aware exist on the graph.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I hadn't considered it in the multiplayer context, but that could definitely be very interesting. I had heard the example, I think it's Andy Henson who does the Stoic quotes. He talked about that. He was one of my panelists on the journaling session, and I'm kind of into Stoicism and thought that was a great idea as well. So definitely, I think a great way to again promote just kind of that serendipity in the graph. Remedy Rubber Club in the chat says multiple times I've extended work I had set aside based on serendipity. It's a winner on every level. So I think that's really cool. Lukas, I'd love to get your perspectives on sort of introducing this kind of random element into the Roam graph.
Love it. What I have set up is a tag for something I call long-term research questions, and randomly pull from those, right? So it's like blocks that have what are the fundamental skills of knowledge work, right? That's kind of a long-term research question. And I have like 5 or 10 of those, and every other day I randomly pull from that collection, and then I just think, right? And that kind of keeps me engaged, right? Because it's not like, oh God, today I have to think about the fundamentals of knowledge work again. But it is, okay, today I get to think about this. The other day I get to think about the other thing, right? And I think it's really great way to keep your thinking fresh, even though you're thinking about the same questions, for example, over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lukas, I think your camera went off. We can still hear your audio just fine.
Give
so
me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, you're good on audio. We'll go ahead and come back over to you, David, because you've got another plugin here that we wanted to talk about on today's Roam Summit. I think this one is very, very cool as well. It's called Static Cite. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so this is the first of 2 examples of what I'm calling services. So on Roam.js, we have extensions, which are all free plugins that mostly run just like within the Roam browser. And then we have 2 services that, because they utilize Roam.js backend services, they'll be paid, sort of paid extensions. And so the use case here is that we all use Roam to take notes and write content, and a lot of people have expressed the interest of wanting to deploy the content that we're already creating within Roam as like its own personal site. So either like a personal blog, or maybe like course notes, or a public garden. There's another one of these solutions called Roam Garden, made by Vlad from the community, which is also a super cool product. Tackles a similar problem. And so yes, the goal is to be able to use our Roam graphs as a CMS that can be exported as a public website.
Got it. Very cool. And I really like this one. I played around with Roam Garden for a little bit. I thought it was kind of compelling. I didn't admittedly spend a ton of time with it. I know one of the things that I noticed about it was kind of a manual sort of porting over of JSON files in order to get those up onto the garden. Is yours set up where it becomes that static site right out of your native Roam graph using tags? Or talk us through a little bit about, once you have it set up, how do you sort of delineate what within your graph is public and what isn't?
Yeah, so the goal with this service and with all Roam.js extensions and services is that all of it will take place within your graph. And so by installing the extension, you'll have like a static site dashboard come up within your static site page within Roam. And then from there, you can configure what you want to be included and not included in your site. And so specifying what's included in your site is as simple as saying which tags you want to filter by. And so by specifying let's say website tag, then every page in your Roam graph that has the tag website will be included in your static site export. And then you can specify multiple of those filters, and then deploying it to the public site. There's just a button within Roam that you can just click and it'll export, and it'll kick off the deploy. So no need to export JSON files and copy it over. And it just happens all within Roam. You can click one button, it'll go.
Awesome. I'd love to come to you, Lukas, here and get your perspectives. Do you do anything within your graph that you're sort of looking to export and share publicly? Do you have other ways of doing that? What's your take on this service?
Yeah, so I have one public Roam graph that is distinct from my personal private one. And I really love what David is doing here. This is awesome. I just haven't had the time to really give it a spin yet, because the graph nature makes the thinking awesome, but the filtering hard for publishing, I feel. Right, so figuring out, okay, what exactly do I want in what level of polish, right? How much do I want to polish before I publish? How do I distinguish that from the emergent things? That's still not clear for me, but I'd love to get something going with this extension, and I'm definitely looking forward to playing with it, because I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a common challenge, I presume, because for me as well, right? I know when I first started really hitting my stride with Roam, I was kind of in this headspace of wanting more of my graph to be polished and shareable. And then you realize that you really, with Roam, at least for me, it's kind of, embrace the mess. Right. And totally. In part, it's okay to have just portions of the graph that are just totally all over the place and may never see the light of day other than me. And that's fine, because the purpose of it is to have that sort of repository. right? But I do think that over time, I suspect we'll see more and more people wanting to have portions of the graph that are shareable as their work develops, and they want to get ideas out there. And the idea of community and letting ideas collide with one another is really popular in the Roam community, and I think really compelling. And I think that services like this have a key role to play in the future of it.
I'd love to ask David if you've had any experiences now that the service is out with either doing it yourself or others. How do they solve this kind of challenge of figuring out what should be published, what's private? How do I weigh the polish against the rawness? What's your experience there?
Yeah, so far the few use cases are they're more on the like raw side. Like it's more they've sort of they have like a garden of like random notes and like random thoughts of random things that they're tracking, and they're just okay with that being unpolished and published to the world. The other use case I've like seen talked about, but is not using the service right now, is like a personal blog, which is like that has its own like it's sort of easy to like delineate. It's like, okay, this blog post is done. Let me like put a publish tag on it. And so I've seen sort of like the two extremes on this topic, but I haven't yet seen anyone like grapple like in the middle, or like grapple with the question of like, should this or should this not be used? Like, should I or should I not publish that? I haven't really come across anyone struggle with that question, but it'd be a fun one to tackle with them.
Awesome.
Yeah, there was a question from Supercharge Your Writing. Does it export to my existing website or a different one for you, David?
Yeah, it would have to export to a new website. So basically it creates like brand new pages, and you'll attach like a new domain that is presumably not being used to like use for another site. And it'll like that domain will point to the HTML content. Now you can use a subdomain of like an existing site. So if you had like davidvargas.com for like your regular stuff, and then you wanted like a roam.davidvargas.com, you can use the roam.davidvargas.com to point to your like exported Roam content.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try it out. I saw the Roam Garden stuff previously and thought it was really interesting, and just haven't taken the time to set up kind of like one of the, what's it called? Digital garden? Is that just the word for it? I think that's it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's really interesting because philosophically, when Connor and other Roam team folks talk about the trajectory, it sounds a lot more like multiplayer than single player, almost like Roam as like an alternative to Google and a way to connect everybody's thoughts together. So I think this is a really interesting kind of transition phase of moving more and more in that direction and encouraging more and more public notes. And like, I feel like all of us in real time are going to have to start developing like the shared vernacular and syntax of like how to make an attractive Roam graph that isn't like just purely like fleeting notes and all these compressed thoughts, which are really useful for the individual. I know that's something that I'm thinking through right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the sort of marriage of this and the movement towards more multiplayer is interesting. There's also this idea of federated wikis. I'm not sure if you guys are super familiar with that, but the guy who started Wikipedia has kind of started to really promote this idea of like Wikipedia is great, but the content all still kind of lives in one place. And a federated wiki, kind of oversimplified explanation, is like you can sort of grab pieces from another wiki and put them in your own, and sort of like a decentralized model, right? And I think it's very applicable to the future of Roam multiplayer, where these blocks of content are kind of out there in the public domain, and you can grab them and sort of remix and mix and match. And like you said, I think it's really interesting to think about. So this broader trend of like, where do you go with your graph in terms of that, the rawness on one side and kind of the polish and shareability of the other, I think is an interesting area.
I'm really looking forward to the day when there are features supported to like block reference or page reference blocks and pages from across graphs. Because it's just gonna like really unlock this like idea of being like a networking tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds a lot like what Jason was talking about in terms of like being able to block reference external sites and pull it in. There was a conversation on Twitter yesterday or recently with VisaCon V, if you guys are familiar, just talking about how much of social media content is actually just screenshots from other social media content, which then had, I think, Connor weighing in and being like, talking about, or maybe it was Bardia, but someone on the Roam team talking about how they do that with tweets, and you can pull tweets into a Roam graph. And then if, I think you probably have existing JS plugins for this, but then if it could automatically like pull that tweet content, then it's a canonical place for like that social media to live in perpetuity, to be able to block reference and like retweet into a Roam graph and things like that, which is really exciting to me.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. The idea of just kind of grabbing and remixing, but then preserving that sort of attribution and knowing kind of where things came from originally. Very interesting. Cool. Well, let's move on. We've got one more topic that I wanted to cover, and this is not a creation of any of the panelists on this call, but I thought an interesting topic that's getting a fair amount of attention, and that is PhonetoRoam. And this PhonetoRoam service that, if you're not familiar, not a ton to look at here on the webpage, but I think kind of an interesting idea, especially given where Roam is at with regards to mobile. And I've played around with this on one of my graphs, and the idea is very simple. You can set this up and use SMS to quickly send blocks into your graph. And I'm curious if any of you guys have any of you guys played with this one yet?
No, not at all.
I haven't played with this one yet, though I know the person who made it pretty well. Scott Block is awesome. So shout out to him. I remember like trying to use quick capture through like the Roam's like web quick capture feature on my phone, and it feeling very like rigid or just like not quick capture at all, because you have to like open the app, wait for the spinner to stop loading, have the thing there, write some thoughts, not knowing where it went. And so I think there's a huge space for just quick capture from a bunch of different places, from email, from your browser, from your cell phone, from any other places. And he sort of showed that he sort of like introduced a paradigm, like this is how you can do it. Now let's do it from all these different sources.
Yeah, I agree. And that was kind of where I wanted to take this, was into a broader conversation about your guys' mobile Roam experience, to the extent that you have one. It's tough. I use Roam every now and then on my mobile device, but it's usually when I'm in a situation where I just want to look something up real quickly in my graph, and I'll go in and do that. But the quick capture, I've all but given up on using, and I had kind of developed a workflow personally where I would just write things down on my iOS Notes app, and I have a daily journaling practice where I'm in Roam anyways. So part of that practice became just opening up my Notes app and kind of manually moving stuff over. But I've been playing around with the PhonetoRoam just for those really fleeting things that cross your mind, and you just need a super quick way to get them into your graph. And I find it compelling. Marc, I'm curious to come to you here. Do you have any workflows that you've set up? I know you said you haven't used PhonetoRoam yet, but what's kind of your workflow for, you're walking through the grocery store or something, and you think of something that you want to make sure makes its way into your graph? How are you handling that today?
Yeah, I use an app called Simple Note, which is basically just a Apple agnostic version of something like Apple Notes that you might have on an iPhone. So it works offline, and then when you get online, it syncs to wherever. So then it's just a bunch of basically text notes to myself with an inbox note pinned at the top. And then I semi-regularly will go through those notes and then port whatever's actually interesting and applicable into Roam manually. So it's just a real simple like offline tool. But the thing that I use even more often than that is Readwise. So I will constantly on Twitter be seeing interesting things that I want to record to my graph, and I will use the Readwise integration to tweet it at them and then tag it in that. And I have developed a bunch of different like text replacement shorthand so that I can really quickly tag. So like create a little shortcut that will create like hashtags and things like that, or even common tags that you'd use pretty often. So that's another way to kind of reduce the friction on the mobile side.
Interesting. Elaborate on the shortcuts that you're creating a little bit. What are you using to create those?
Yeah, so if you have an iPhone, you can just go to your search bar and search text replacement. and that will take you to, under your keyboard settings, this big old thing that has common replacements. So for example, bookmarks, I have BK, and that'll save it to my bookmarks. TD would be to do, like 3BR will actually put like 3 different empty bracket spots. So I can quickly like tag multiple brackets all at once. And then if you're on desktop, obviously you can use something a little bit more robust, like Alfred or Text Expander, I think is the name of it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I use Text Expander. So that's cool. Yeah, I actually didn't know that existed on iPhone. I'll have to go check that out. So
super
learned
helpful.
Something new today. Lukas, I'd love to get your perspectives. I think you said you have not used PhonetoRoam yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. For the text replacement, I use that predominantly to do the ASCII style I don't know emoji thing. So that's fantastic because I can type that out myself. So XOL turns into on my iOS.
I use that for arrows and bullets as well.
Nice, very good. Yes. But for PhonetoRoam, I haven't tried it out. I'm kind of waiting for the WhatsApp integration that's apparently coming, or that I think I've read is coming, because I'm in Germany and I wasn't sure like how does that work with international SMS and whatever, and I was not too sure how that would work, and I'm at home since we are in lockdown anyways all the time, so I'm not like on my phone as much as I would otherwise be. I do want to endorse the Readwise thing that you guys just talked about, and shout out to Tristan from Readwise, who's been like really great in setting up the Readwise to Roam integration with templates and what have you. It's brilliant. I use that all the time to send tweets into my Roam database, nicely formatted with block quotes and what have you. So that's fantastic. And otherwise, I struggle with the quick capture on the phone, as you all do and just talked about. I tried the quick capture thing, which is more of a slow capture, and so I've personally I don't use Apple Notes. I use Drafts on iOS, which is awesome. Syncs to the Mac as well, so it's kind of simple note type stuff. It doesn't matter, right? It's just some place to dump your thoughts. Mark Robertson for Draft specifically has, so Cal Historian on Twitter, shout out to Mark, hi Mark, has some great Apple iOS shortcuts for like collating all of these in drafts and making a one note you can very easily copy paste if you capture throughout the day into drafts. So do check that out. I think that's on RoamBrain. Fantastic article with linked iOS shortcuts you just have to kind of install. But otherwise, yeah, that's what I do. I use drafts, and I really, really wish there was an actual just share menu, share to Roam thing, because there's an actual Roam app on iOS, but that's coming, and I'm very excited for it once that hits.
Yeah, definitely. So interesting sidebar here. I'll just mention very quickly, Justin said he also just learned that iOS allows double or triple tap on the back of the phone to trigger shortcuts. I had no idea. So
True.
I'll have to
I'll
have to play around with that. So all sorts of creative ways that we can sort of get around this limitation of Roam not having an app or a great quick capture thing built in. David, as the developer in the room, I'm going to ask you to rub the crystal ball and give us your sort of what's your prognosis on Roam and a mobile app, to the extent that you have one. I'm just curious for your perspectives.
Oh man, what a question. I remember seeing Connor tweet a while ago that they were looking for a mobile developer, but my sense is that the Roam team has a very amorphous roadmap that they're always pivoting, and nothing's like too set in stone. So it's hard for me to say when they will have one out. I'm hoping that Roam.js could have time to develop just like a quick capture form from a mobile app in like the next 6 months, because this is just like something that I personally want. Like my quick capture solution right now is a pen and paper, and I'm not a big
Nothing wrong with that
either.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, I did. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. And so like, again, I just really want to emphasize that like what Scott did here was like just show like the pattern for developers on like how you can sort of upload data to Roam without a like backend API being released yet, and that paradigm should be able to be replicated for mobile apps, for Chrome extensions, for like all other sources.
Got it. So you kind of gave a bit of a formula there that other developers may be able to look at, and kind of going back to that idea of grabbing ideas and remixing, right, that we were talking about earlier. There may be some potential there. I did notice that recently in the Roam changelog that they had done some work on the mobile interface. Nothing major, so cleaning up some interface things and some buttons. And David, I actually think one of the things that you had worked on might have been part of that. Correct me if I'm wrong, like a to-do.
So to-dos, there was like no button or like no like simple button like to create a to-do on mobile. Like the way to do it on desktop is to hit Control Enter, but you can't do that on mobile. And so Roam.js had a mobile to-do extension that just put it on that mobile bar on the bottom, and then Roam just implemented it natively. So
awesome.
Anyone who has the mobile to-do extension from Roam.js, you should complete that and use the native Roam one.
That's so cool.
Out now. Yeah, I was pretty pumped because it was like the first Roam.js extension that like made it.
Natively. Yeah, I made this. It's like the double semicolon from Roam 42, making it into the eventual templates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
people you've arrived.
Yeah, people like have asked me and Chris like whether like that sort of thing would make us upset or frustrated, when I personally think it's like I'm like jumping for joy when I see something like that, because it's like less code for me to like maintain going forward, right? Like I can just like now delete that and get it out of sight. But B, it's also like, you have like that feeling of impact by like something that you made, like the team took it upon themselves and now have implemented it now. Like it's gonna now reach a much wider audience than like my or Chris's audience, because we probably only are tapping into like a power user like 10-15%.
Super validating.
Indeed. Great stuff. Well, guys, this has been really fun. Definitely appreciate you all three coming on. I'd love to give you each a quick chance to let the audience know if they want to connect with you or learn more about their work. What would be the best way for them to do that? And David, we'll start with you.
So I release a bunch of news on my Twitter account. So that's at dvargas92495. And then the other place to follow along is at roamjs.com. There's like a newsletter digest that you can subscribe to for updates. And I'm also offering to anyone who's interested in the static site service or the other service that's out right now, if you're interested in signing up, and if you reach out to support@roamjs.com, or if you just message me directly, I'm offering the first 3 months free. And so if we like set up a call and onboard you during those first few minutes, and you can give like live feedback, you'll get the first 3 months free. So
awesome.
Look forward to that.
Good stuff. Mark, what would be a great good way for the audience to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm dropping it in the chat, but I've got a website, which is marckoenig.com. And that's if you want to sign up for future stuff with 30 Days of Roam, just get on the waiting list there. But then there's also Twitter and YouTube. So come hang out wherever. Tweeting at me. My DMs are open, so that should work as a pretty reliable way to get in touch if you want to chat about whatever.
Cool. Good stuff. Lukas, how about you?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. This was awesome. I'm best reached through Twitter at CortexFutura. You can check out my writing on www.cortexfutura.com. I have a YouTube channel as well. And if you're new to Roam, A, awesome to have you in the community, and B, check out Marc's and my stuff on getting started with that. His cohort is sold out, so you might want to check out my course, Roam in Context. I think it's linked down below. yeah, drop me a line on Twitter. I really like talking to Romans.
Great.
I'm signed
Great
up.
stuff.
I'm signed up
Go
for
ahead,
your
Marc.
waitlist, Lucas.
Awesome.
All right, good stuff. Well, really quickly, so all of those links and additional resources and things that we talked about will be included. I'll send out some follow-up session notes. So if you're not already on the email list, be sure to do that at subscribe.roamsummit.com. That'll get you signed up for, again, additional resources from this session, as well as reminders about many future sessions that we've got planned coming up. Give us a follow over on Twitter at Roam Summit. That's a pretty new handle that I've got up. And so I'm trying to get the community built up there. So head on over to Twitter at Roam Summit and give a follow there. And then if you want to reach out with any ideas for future sessions, love to hear from people. I've had a lot of great suggestions. So Jason at roamsummit.com. Also, if you're interested in being a panelist on a future session, I would love to hear from you. So take a minute to do that. With that said, we will go ahead and wrap up this session. David, Marc, Lukas, thank you guys again. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you for having us.
All right, everyone. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
See ya.